The 280-pound man hit the floor at table 6 like a felled oak, and the crash of shattering glass cut through the birthday songs and clinking silverware. His name was Marcus Thorne, Navy SEAL, classified operator, ghost in the system. And in the span of 3 heartbeats, his lips went from sunburned tan to corpse blue. Blood trickled from his nose. His fingers clawed at his chest like something inside was tearing him apart from the ribs out. Off duty. ICU nurse Kira Dawson looked up from her salmon and saw it all. The death mask spreading across his face, the way his pupils blew wide and glassy, the stillness that comes when the heart forgets how to beat. She knew that look. She'd seen it 40 times in trauma, and it never ended well without intervention. "Somebody call 911, she shouted, shoving her chair back so hard it toppled. No one moved. They stared like it was dinner theater. Kira dropped to her knees beside him, pressed 2 fingers to his carotid. Nothing. No pulse. No breath. Just dead weight on a sticky restaurant floor in Bridgeton, Oregon. Population 89,000, 1 trauma center, and a 4-minute window before brain death. She had no crash cart, no defibrillator, no backup, just her hands and a clock that was already running out. If you want to see how this story ends, if you want to know what Kira did that changed everything, stick with me all the way to the finish. And drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Kira Dawson had been off the clock for exactly 43 minutes. She'd clocked out at Bridgeton Regional Medical Center at 6:17 p.m. after a 12-hour shift in the ICU that had included 2 codes, 1 combative meth patient who tried to bite a security guard, and a doctor who kept overriding her charting because he didn't like her tone. She'd driven straight to Harlow's Grill on the east side of town, ordered a glass of Pinot Grigio and the grilled salmon special, and told herself she wasn't going to think about work for at least 2 hours. That lasted until table 6. The man who collapsed was massive, 6'3", maybe 280, built like he could bench press a Volkswagen. He'd been sitting alone near the window, nursing a whiskey neat and scrolling through his phone with the kind of focus that suggested he wasn't reading restaurant reviews. Dark Henley, faded jeans, boots that had seen real miles. His face was all hard angles and old scars, the kind you don't get from bar fights. Kira had clocked him when she walked in because women who work nights in hospitals learn to profile danger. He hadn't looked dangerous, just contained, like a bomb in a locked safe. Then he stood up, reached for his wallet, and his hand froze midair. His eyes went wide. His mouth opened like he was trying to say something, but no sound came out. Then his knees buckled and he went down hard, taking the whiskey glass and half the silverware with him. The crash was enormous. People screamed. A waiter dropped a tray of appetizers. Kira was moving before she even registered the decision. She shoved past a woman in a blazer who was filming on her phone and dropped beside him, her knees hitting the tile hard enough to bruise. Up close, it was worse. His lips were cyanotic, deep, dusky blue. His chest wasn't moving. His eyes were half open and unfocused, pupils blown wide like black moons. She pressed 2 fingers to his carotid artery. Nothing. No pulse. "Someone call 911 right now," she barked, loud enough that half the restaurant flinched. A man in a polo shirt fumbled for his phone. I'm calling. Do it faster." Kira tilted Marcus's head back, checked his airway. Clear. No obstruction. No vomit. She pinched his nose, sealed her mouth over his, and gave 2 rescue breaths. His chest rose. Good. Airway patent. But when she put her ear to his mouth, there was no return breath. No spontaneous respiration. Cardiac arrest. She laced her fingers together, positioned her hands over the center of his chest, and started compressions. Hard and fast. The American Heart Association said at least 2 inches deep, 100 to 120 compressions per minute, and Kira had done this enough times that her body knew the rhythm better than her mind. 1, 2, 3, 4. She counted in her head, lips moving silently. Around her, the restaurant had gone quiet, except for the low murmur of shock and the distant clatter of kitchen staff, who didn't know whether to keep cooking or evacuate. At 30 compressions, she gave 2 more breaths, then back to compressions. A middle-aged man in a button-down crouched beside her. "Is there anything I can do? Can you do CPR?" I took a class once, but then get ready to switch with me in 1 minute. I'll tell you when. He nodded, pale but focused. Kira kept going. Her shoulders were already burning. Effective CPR was exhausting. Most people didn't realize that. You had to push hard enough to compress the heart between the sternum and the spine, hard enough to crack ribs sometimes. And you had to keep doing it without stopping until an AED arrived or the paramedics took over. She was on her second cycle when she noticed something wrong. The chest wasn't moving right. She'd done compressions on hundreds of patients. She knew what it was supposed to feel like. The give and resistance of ribs flexing, the slight rebound between compressions. This was different. There was a strange hollowness on the left side, and when she pressed down, she felt a subtle shift, like the chest wall wasn't properly anchored, and his neck veins were distended, bulging. Her hand stilled for half a second. No. She leaned down, put her ear against the left side of his chest, and listened while she tapped gently with her fingers. Hyperresonance, hollow. No breath sounds on the left. Tension pneumothorax. Damn it, she whispered. A tension pneumothorax wasn't just a collapsed lung. It was a collapsed lung with a one-way valve that kept letting air into the chest cavity but wouldn't let it out. The pressure built up, compressing the heart and the great vessels, choking off blood return. CPR wouldn't fix it. An AED wouldn't fix it. If she didn't decompress that chest right now, he was going to die on this floor no matter what she did. She looked up at the man in the button-down. Are you ready? Yeah, I think so. Good. Take over compressions. Same spot. Don't stop. He slid into position, hands shaking but determined. Kira stood and scanned the restaurant like a hawk. She spotted the manager near the bar, a thin man with a name tag that said Derek, and a look of barely contained panic. Do you have an AED? She called out. A what? A defibrillator. No, we don't. Knife. I need the sharpest knife you have in this building, right now. Derek stared at her like she'd asked for a flamethrower. What? A knife. Paring knife, fillet knife, I don't care. Bring me the sharpest one you've got, and I need a pen, a ballpoint pen. A waitress with purple hair stepped forward. I have a pen. Give it to me. The waitress handed over a cheap plastic ballpoint. Kira twisted it apart, dumping the ink cartridge and spring onto the floor, leaving just the hollow barrel. It was barely wider than a straw, but it would have to work. Derek came running back from the kitchen with a paring knife and a white towel. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped it. Kira took it, tested the edge with her thumb. Sharp enough. Barely. She knelt back down beside Marcus. The man doing compressions looked up at her, sweat already beading on his forehead. What are you going to do? Something I've only done once before, in a trauma bay with a surgeon standing next to me. His eyes went wide. Should you? If I don't, he dies. Keep going. She ran her fingers along Marcus's ribs, counting down from the clavicle. Second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line. Right there. She could feel the gap between the ribs, the thin layer of muscle and tissue over the pleural cavity. In a hospital, she'd have a 14-gauge needle, sterile gloves, local anesthetic. Here, she had a kitchen knife, a pen barrel, and 30 seconds before irreversible brain damage. Stop compressions, she said. The man pulled back. Kira took a breath, steadied her hand, and drove the blade in. It went through skin and muscle with a sickening resistance, and then suddenly, nothing. The knife had pierced the pleural membrane. She pulled the blade out, grabbed the pen barrel, and jammed it into the incision, angling it down and inward. A violent hiss of air burst out of the tube, loud, sharp, like a tire releasing pressure. And Marcus's chest visibly deflated on the left side. Then his whole body jerked. His back arched off the floor. His eyes snapped open, wild, unfocused, predatory, and his right hand shot up and locked around Kira's wrist with crushing force. She gasped. His grip was iron. His pupils were still blown, but there was something behind them now, something awake and dangerous. Stop, she said firmly, locking eyes with him. Look at me. You're safe. You had a collapsed lung. If you move, you're going to make it worse. For a moment, she thought he was going to snap her wrist. Then his grip loosened. His breathing was ragged, shallow, but it was there. His pulse hammered against her fingers.
Paramedics are coming, she said. Stay still. His lips moved. No sound came out, but she could read the shape of the word. Who? My name's Kira. I'm a nurse. You're going to be okay. His eyes searched her face like he was trying to decide whether to believe her. Then they rolled back and he went slack again. Not unconscious, but close. His breathing was thin and labored, but steady. Kira sat back on her heels, heart hammering. The pen tube stuck out of his chest at an awkward angle, a thin trickle of blood running down his ribs.
Around her, the restaurant was dead silent, 20 people staring at her like she'd just performed an exorcism. The waitress with purple hair broke the silence. Did you just stab him? I decompressed a tension pneumothorax with a needle thoracostomy, Kira said flatly. In a hospital, we'd use a chest tube. Here, I used what I had. But you saved his life. Yes. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Kira stayed beside Marcus, one hand on his shoulder, monitoring his breathing. His color was improving, still pale, but the blue was fading from his lips. His pulse was thready, but present. She could feel the faint rise and fall of his chest under her palm. The paramedics burst through the door 4 minutes later, 2 men in Navy uniforms with a jump bag and a backboard. The lead medic took one look at the pen sticking out of Marcus's chest, and his eyebrows shot up. You do that? He asked Kira. Tension pneumo, left side. I decompressed in the field. He knelt down, checked Marcus's vitals, and nodded slowly. Good call. We'll get a proper tube in him en route. You a doctor? ICU nurse, Bridgeton Regional. Well, you just saved this guy's life. They moved fast, oxygen mask, IV line, chest tube kit prepped for the ambulance. Kira stepped back, hands still trembling with adrenaline, and watched them load Marcus onto the gurney. His eyes flickered open once, just for a second, and he looked straight at her. She nodded. He didn't nod back. But something in his gaze shifted. Acknowledgement, maybe. Or a warning. Then they wheeled him out, and the sirens faded into the night. Kira stood in the middle of Harlow's Grill, surrounded by shattered glass and overturned chairs and a restaurant full of people who were staring at her like she was a bomb disposal expert who'd just cut the red wire. Derek, the manager, approached cautiously. Ma'am, I don't know what to say. That was incredible. It was a medical procedure, Kira said. Nothing incredible about it. Can I get you anything? Your meal's on the house, obviously, and I'm good, thanks. She walked back to her table, picked up her purse, and left $40 on the table even though Derek said the meal was free. Her salmon was cold. The wine was warm. She didn't care. She just wanted to go home. But as she pushed through the front door into the cool Oregon night, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at Bridgeton Regional. Trauma 1. 1 hour. Come alone. MT. Kira stared at the screen. Mount Marcus Thorne. How the hell did he get her number? And why did a man who'd just been resuscitated on a restaurant floor sound like he was issuing orders? She almost deleted the text, almost got in her car and drove home, and pretended this whole night had been a fever dream. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the way he'd looked at her before they took him away. Maybe it was the years of working ICU nights and learning to trust her gut when something felt wrong. Maybe it was the fact that she'd seen enough classified cases roll through Bridgeton Regional to know that some patients weren't random. She got in her car and drove to the hospital. Bridgeton Regional Medical Center sat on a hill on the west side of town, a sprawling concrete fortress with a trauma center that serviced 3 counties. Kira had worked there for 6 years, ever since she'd finished her BSN at Portland State and decided she didn't want to work in a sleepy clinic. She liked the chaos. She liked the stakes. She liked knowing that when someone's heart stopped, she was the one who got to fight back. She parked in the employee lot and walked through the staff entrance, badging in with her hospital ID. The night shift charge nurse, a woman named Claudia with steel gray hair and the disposition of a drill sergeant, looked up from the desk and frowned. Dawson, you're off tonight. I know, I'm just checking on a patient. Which one? The guy they brought in from Harlow's Grill, tension pneumo, field decompression. Claudia's frown deepened. Trauma 1, but he's restricted. Kira stopped. Restricted. Federal. We got a call 20 minutes ago. No visitors, no uncleared staff. Dr. Mehta's in there now with 2 men in suits who won't give their names. A cold prickle ran down Kira's spine. What agency? They didn't say. Just flashed badges and locked the door. Kira's instinct screamed at her to walk away, but she didn't. She turned down the hallway toward Trauma 1, her footsteps echoing on the linoleum. The door to Trauma 1 was closed. Through the narrow window, she could see movement inside. 2 men in dark suits standing on either side of the bed. One of them was holding a syringe. The other had his hand inside his jacket. Dr. Mehta stood by the monitors, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. And on the bed, half sedated and intubated, was Marcus Thorne. Kira pushed the door open. All 3 men turned to look at her. "Who are you?" the one with the syringe said. He was tall, pale, with the kind of face that belonged on a corporate lawyer. His suit was expensive. His eyes were dead. "I'm the nurse who saved his life," Kira said. "What are you doing?" "That's classified." "Really? Because I'm pretty sure injecting a patient without a medical order is assault." The man's expression didn't change. "You need to leave." "Show me your badge." "Excuse me?" "You said you're federal. Show me your credentials. I'll send a picture to Bridgeton PD and they can verify." The man with his hand in his jacket took a step forward. "Ma'am, this is a matter of national security. You're interfering with what? A medical procedure? Because I don't see a doctor's order, I don't see a pharmacy label, and I don't see any identification." Dr. Mehta finally spoke up. "Kira, maybe you should stay out of this, Mehta." The man with the syringe glanced at his partner. Something passed between them, a look that Kira had seen before, in the eyes of addicts and abusers and people who decided the rules didn't apply to them. "Last chance," he said. "Leave now, or we remove you." Kira pulled out her phone and held it up. "Say that again, on camera." The man's hand moved toward his jacket, and Marcus Thorne's eyes snapped open. Despite the sedation, despite the intubation, despite the fact that he should have been unconscious, his right hand shot out and locked around the wrist of the man reaching for his jacket. There was a sickening crack, the sound of bone breaking, and the man screamed. Marcus ripped the IV line out of his arm, tore the intubation tube from his throat, and rolled off the bed in one fluid motion. Blood sprayed across the white sheets. Alarms shrieked. The second man, the one with the syringe, lunged forward, but Marcus caught him by the throat and slammed him into the wall hard enough to crack the drywall. Kira didn't think. She grabbed Marcus by the shoulder and shouted, "Stop! You're going to kill yourself!" He turned to look at her, and for a moment she saw something in his eyes that wasn't entirely human. Then he blinked, and it was gone. "We need to leave," he rasped. His voice was shredded from the intubation. "Right now." "You just had a chest tube placed. They're not federal agents. They're here to kill me." The man on the floor groaned and reached for something in his jacket. Marcus stepped on his hand, grinding down with his boot until the man screamed again. "Kira!" Marcus locked eyes with her. "Do you trust me?" She should have said no. She should have hit the code button and let security handle it, but she looked at the syringe on the floor, unlabeled, no medical documentation, and the 2 men in expensive suits who'd tried to inject a sedated patient in a locked room. "Go," she said. Marcus grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward the door. Behind them, Dr. Mehta was shouting into a phone. The man with the broken wrist was scrambling to his feet, and somewhere in the building an alarm started wailing, not a code, but something else, something worse. Marcus and Kira ran. They made it to the end of the hallway before the first gunshot cracked through the air. The bullet punched through the drywall 6 inches from Kira's head, and she dove sideways on pure instinct, hitting the floor hard enough to knock the wind out of her lungs. Marcus pulled her up with one hand and shoved her toward the stairwell door. "Move!" he barked. They crashed through the door and took the stairs 3 at a time, Marcus half dragging her because her legs couldn't keep up. Behind them, she could hear boots pounding on linoleum, voices shouting coordinates into radios. "Who the hell are these people?" she gasped. "Private contractors. Cleaners." "Cleaners?" "People who make problems disappear." They hit the ground floor and Marcus kicked open the emergency exit, triggering another alarm. The parking garage was dim and echoing, full of shadows and the smell of oil and exhaust. Marcus pulled her toward a black pickup truck in the corner. "Get in." "That's not your truck." "It is now." He smashed the driver's side window with his elbow, reached in, and hot-wired the ignition in under 30 seconds. The engine roared to life. Kira climbed into the passenger seat just as headlights flooded the garage behind them. 4 black SUVs, all identical, all moving fast. Marcus threw the truck into reverse and floored it, tires screaming. He spun the wheel, whipped the truck around, and punched through the exit gate like it was made of cardboard. They hit the street doing 60, ran a red light, and sideswiped a parked sedan. Marcus didn't slow down. He took a hard left onto a side street, then another right, weaving through residential neighborhoods like he'd memorized the map. Kira braced herself against the dashboard, heart hammering. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere they won't look." "Who are they?" "People who want me dead before I talk." "Talk about what?" Marcus didn't answer. He took another turn, this one onto a dirt road that cut through a stretch of forest on the edge of town. The headlights behind them were falling back but not disappearing. 2 miles in, he pulled off the road and killed the engine. The forest swallowed them whole. Darkness pressed in on all sides, broken only by the faint glow of the dashboard. Marcus sat back, breathing hard. Blood was soaking through the hospital gown and the bandage over his chest tube site. "You're bleeding," Kira said. "I know. We need to get you back to a hospital." "No hospitals, no police, no one. You just got shot at. And if you call the cops, we'll both be dead before morning." Kira stared at him. In the dim light, his face was all hard edges and old scars, the kind you didn't get from training accidents. His eyes were sharp despite the blood loss, despite the sedatives that should have knocked him out. "What did you do?" she asked quietly. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached into his boot and pulled out a small USB drive, no bigger than his thumb. "I found proof," he said. "Proof that someone in the chain of command is selling weapons to hostile forces. Proof that they've been doing it for years. And proof that they're willing to kill anyone who gets in the way." Kira's stomach dropped. "You're talking about treason." "I'm talking about a general who's made $40 million off dead soldiers." "Who?" "General Adrian Rourke, Joint Special Operations Command, 3-star, untouchable." Kira felt the weight of it settle over her like a lead blanket. This wasn't a random shooting. This wasn't a burglary gone wrong. This was the kind of thing that ended with bodies in shallow graves and stories buried in classified files. "Why did they wait until now?" she asked. "Why not kill you before you got to the hospital?" "Because they didn't know I had the drive. They thought I was just a loose end, someone who saw too much and needed to be silenced. But once I collapsed, they realized I might still be carrying evidence, so they sent the cleaners." "And the syringe?" "Potassium chloride. Stops the heart. Looks like natural causes." Kira felt a wave of nausea roll through her. She'd saved his life twice now, once in the restaurant, once in Trauma 1, and both times someone had tried to take it away. "What do we do now?" she asked. Marcus looked down at the USB drive in his palm. "We upload this. Everywhere. Every news outlet. Every congressional inbox. Every watchdog agency I can think of. Once it's public, the kill order gets a lot harder to execute. And if they find us first, then we fight." Kira wanted to argue, wanted to tell him this was insane, that they should go to the FBI or the Inspector General or someone with actual authority. But she'd seen the men in Trauma 1. She'd seen the syringe. She'd heard the gunshot in the hallway. There was no one coming to save them. "Okay," she said. "Where do we upload it?" Marcus started the truck. "There's a safe house, 20 minutes east, old comms station, off the grid. We can use the equipment there." He pulled back onto the dirt road and drove deeper into the forest, headlights cutting through the darkness like twin blades. Behind them, the black SUVs regrouped and followed. And in the distance, the sound of helicopter rotors began to echo through the trees. The helicopter's rotors carved through the night sky somewhere behind them, the rhythmic thump growing louder with each passing second. Marcus kept the stolen pickup at 40 miles per hour on the narrow dirt road, headlights off, navigating by moonlight and memory. Every few seconds he glanced at the rearview mirror, watching for the telltale sweep of searchlights through the trees. Kira gripped the door handle, her knuckles white. How far? 3 miles, maybe less. The road twisted through dense forest, hemlock and Douglas fir pressing in on both sides like walls. Branches scraped against the truck's roof. The engine noise seemed impossibly loud in the quiet, a mechanical roar that would give them away to anyone listening. Marcus took a hard right onto an even narrower trail, barely more than 2 ruts in the undergrowth. The truck bounced violently over exposed roots and rocks. Kira's head hit the ceiling despite her seatbelt. They'll hear the engine, she said. I know. So what's the plan? Get there first. Not exactly reassuring. Kira twisted in her seat to look back through the rear window. She couldn't see the SUVs anymore, but she could hear them, engines growling somewhere in the darkness, closing the gap. The helicopter was louder now, the sound reverberating through her chest like a second heartbeat. Marcus killed the headlights completely. The forest plunged into shadow. He drove by feel and instinct, the truck lurching over obstacles he couldn't see. Twice they nearly hit trees. Once, the right front tire dropped into a ditch, and Marcus had to gun the engine to pull them out, mud spraying in all directions. Then the trees opened up, and Kira saw it. The safe house sat in a small clearing, surrounded by rusted chain-link fence and overgrown weeds. It was a squat concrete building, maybe 30 feet on a side, with no windows and a single reinforced door. An old radio tower rose from the roof, skeletal and leaning slightly to one side. The whole place looked abandoned, forgotten Cold War infrastructure left to rot in the Oregon wilderness. Marcus drove straight through the fence, the chain link screaming as it tore away from rotted posts. He skidded to a stop 10 feet from the door, threw the truck into park, and was out before Kira could unbuckle. She followed, stumbling in the darkness. The air smelled like pine sap and damp earth. Somewhere behind them, an engine revved. Close now, maybe half a mile. Marcus pulled a key from inside his boot and unlocked the heavy door. It swung inward with a groan of protesting hinges. Inside was pitch black. Get in, he said. Kira ducked through the doorway. Marcus followed and slammed the door behind them, throwing 3 separate deadbolts. Then he flicked a switch on the wall, and fluorescent lights buzzed to life overhead. The interior was a single large room filled with outdated equipment. Radio transmitters, banks of old computers, filing cabinets with broken locks. Everything was covered in dust. In the center of the room sat a newer-looking workstation, incongruous among the Cold War relics. 2 monitors, a server rack, a satellite uplink console. Someone had been maintaining this place. Whose safe house is this? Kira asked. Mine. Technically. Marcus moved to the workstation and powered it up. I bought it through a shell company 3 years ago. No one in the chain of command knows it exists. You've been planning this for 3 years? I've been gathering evidence for 3 years. Planning the escape came later. The computers booted up with a series of beeps and whirs. Marcus pulled the USB drive from his boot and plugged it into the primary machine. His fingers flew across the keyboard, opening encrypted folders, checking file sizes. Kira watched him work, her mind racing. Outside, the helicopter's rotor wash was getting louder. She could hear it through the concrete walls now, a bass-heavy thrum that made the old radio equipment rattle. How long will the upload take? She asked. 12 minutes, maybe 15. We don't have 15 minutes? Then we buy time. Marcus stood and crossed to a metal locker against the far wall. He spun the combination lock and pulled it open. Inside were weapons, rifles, pistols, ammunition boxes, tactical vests. He pulled out a tactical shotgun and a box of shells, loaded it with practiced efficiency. He tossed a smaller pistol to Kira. She caught it reflexively, the weight foreign and cold in her hands. I've never... Safety's here, point and squeeze. Don't aim for center mass, aim for the hips. Bigger target, harder to miss. He pulled out a second rifle and 2 magazines. But if you can avoid shooting anyone, do that instead. This is insane. Yeah. He moved back to the computer, initiated the upload sequence. A progress bar appeared on screen, 0% complete. Estimated time, 14 minutes, 32 seconds. The helicopter's sound peaked, then began to fade slightly, circling, looking for a place to land. Through the walls, Kira could hear engines now, multiple vehicles surrounding the building. Marcus hit a button on the console, and a bank of small monitors flickered to life, showing exterior camera feeds. 4 SUVs had formed a perimeter around the clearing, their headlights trained on the safe house. Men in tactical gear were exiting the vehicles, at least a dozen of them, all carrying automatic weapons. They moved with military precision, spreading out to cover every angle. "Contractors," Marcus said quietly. "Ex-military, Rourke's private cleanup crew." One of them shouted through a megaphone. "Marcus Thorne, we know you're inside. Come out with your hands visible and the woman won't be harmed." Kira's stomach twisted. "They know I'm here." "Of course they do. They've been tracking you since the hospital." "How?" Marcus didn't answer. He was watching the monitors, counting heads, calculating odds. Kira could see it in his eyes, the cold tactical assessment, the switch from person to operator. The voice on the megaphone continued. "You have 60 seconds to comply. After that, we're coming in, and we will use lethal force." Marcus pulled a handheld radio from the locker and keyed it to the same frequency. "You want me? Come get me, but you'll need more men." There was a pause. Then a different voice came over the radio, older, smoother, with the practiced calm of someone who'd given orders for decades. "Commander Thorne, I'm disappointed. I thought we could handle this professionally." Marcus's jaw tightened. "General Rourke." "I'm not a general anymore, Marcus. I retired 6 months ago. I'm just a private citizen now, trying to clean up some unfortunate loose ends. $40 million in weapons sales to hostile forces. That's not a loose end. That's treason. That's geopolitics, something you never quite understood." Rourke's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "You were a good operator, Marcus, one of the best, but you lacked vision. You couldn't see the bigger picture. The bigger picture got 18 Marines killed in Kandahar." Silence on the radio. Then, "Collateral damage, regrettable but necessary. You sold Stinger missiles to the Taliban. I facilitated strategic repositioning of assets to maintain long-term operational leverage in a complex theater. The fact that some of those assets were temporarily utilized against our own forces is unfortunate, but it was always going to be a risk." Kira felt sick. She looked at Marcus and saw murder in his eyes. "You sold out your own people for money," Marcus said into the radio, "and you're going to pay for it." "No, Marcus. You're going to die in that bunker, along with the unfortunate nurse who got caught in the crossfire. And tomorrow morning, the official report will say you went rogue, suffered a psychotic break, and were killed while resisting apprehension. Your service record will be redacted, your name will be forgotten, and I'll still be here." Marcus clicked off the radio and threw it across the room. It shattered against the concrete wall. Kira watched the upload progress bar, 11% complete. Outside, the tactical teams were moving into position. She could see them on the monitors, stacking up at the door, setting charges, preparing for breach. 2 men were climbing onto the roof, carrying something heavy between them. "What are they doing up there?" she asked. Marcus looked at the monitor and cursed. "Thermite. They're going to burn through the roof. Can they do that?" "In about 3 minutes, yeah." He grabbed the tactical vest and started strapping it on, wincing as the movement pulled at his chest tube site. Blood was seeping through the bandage again, a dark stain spreading across the hospital gown he still wore under his jacket. "You're going to pass out," Kira said. "Not yet." "Marcus, I need you to listen to me." He turned to face her, his expression fierce. "When they breach, I'm going to hold them as long as I can, but I can't hold them forever. The upload needs to finish. If I go down, you need to make sure it completes. I'm not leaving you. You don't have a choice. This data is the only thing that matters. Without it, Rourke walks. Without it, all of this was for nothing. Then we both make sure it finishes." Marcus stared at her for a moment, and something shifted in his face. Not quite a smile, but close. "You're stubborn." "I'm an ICU nurse. Stubborn is a job requirement." On the roof, the thermite ignited with a brilliant white flash visible even through the concrete. The temperature in the room started to rise immediately. Kira could smell the acrid burn of metal and stone. Marcus positioned himself behind a concrete support pillar with a clear line of sight to the door. He chambered around in the shotgun and settled in to wait. The upload progress bar crawled upward, 23% complete. The front door exploded inward with a deafening bang that made Kira's ears ring. Smoke and dust filled the room.
Dark figures poured through the breach, moving fast and low, weapons up. Marcus fired twice. The shotgun's roar was enormous in the confined space. The lead man went down, screaming, clutching his shattered leg. The second man dove sideways and returned fire, bullets sparking off the concrete pillar. Kira dropped to the floor behind the server rack, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break her ribs. The pistol Marcus had given her was still in her hand, but she couldn't make herself raise it, couldn't make herself point it at another human being. More gunfire. Marcus was moving between cover positions, firing in controlled bursts, making every shot count. Another man went down, then another. But there were too many of them. For every one Marcus dropped, two more pushed through the doorway. A bullet punched through the server rack inches from Kira's head, showering her with sparks and plastic fragments. She yelped and scrambled backward, pressing herself against the wall. The upload progress bar, 38% complete. On the roof, molten metal started dripping through the ceiling, white hot and hissing. It landed on an old filing cabinet and the metal began to glow red. The smell of burning intensified. Marcus took a round to the tactical vest, the impact spinning him sideways. He stayed on his feet, brought the shotgun up, and fired again. The man who'd shot him collapsed backward through the doorway. But Marcus was slowing down. Blood loss, exhaustion, and sedatives still in his system. Kira could see it in the way he moved. Fractional delays, slight stumbles. He was running on fumes. Another contractor pushed through the smoke and got close. Too close for Marcus to bring the shotgun around. The man swung a rifle stock at Marcus's head. Marcus ducked under it, drove his elbow into the man's throat, and followed up with a knee to the solar plexus. The contractor went down, gasping. But in the moment Marcus was occupied, two more men entered. One of them had a clear shot. Kira didn't think. She raised the pistol with both hands, aimed for the man's hips like Marcus had told her, and squeezed the trigger. The recoil shocked her. The noise was overwhelming. The bullet went wide, hitting the wall 3 feet to the left. But it was enough. The contractor flinched, turned toward her, and that half-second of distraction let Marcus drop him with a point-blank shotgun blast. Marcus looked at Kira across the smoke-filled room, and she saw surprise in his eyes. Maybe respect. Then the ceiling gave way. A section of concrete crashed down in the center of the room, bringing a shower of sparks and molten slag with it. The impact shook the entire building. Old equipment toppled over. One of the monitors on the workstation cracked and went dark. The upload progress bar flickered but held. 51% complete. Through the hole in the roof, Kira could see night sky and the helicopter hovering overhead, spotlight blazing down into the room. A rope dropped through the opening and a figure in black tactical gear rappelled down, fast, controlled, hitting the floor in a combat crouch. This one was different. Female, lean, moving with the kind of precision that made Marcus look slow. She had a suppressed submachine gun in a two-handed grip and eyes like chips of obsidian. Marcus raised the shotgun, but she was faster. 3 suppressed rounds stitched across his chest. The tactical vest caught 2, but the third punched through his shoulder. He staggered back, blood spraying. The woman advanced, weapon trained on him. "Drop it, Commander." Marcus didn't drop it. He tried to bring the shotgun up one-handed, but his arm wasn't responding. The weapon fell from his grip and clattered on the concrete. The woman kicked it away and leveled her gun at his head. "Upload code, now!" "Go to hell." She shifted her aim to Kira. "Her first then, kneecaps, then elbows, then gut. You'll watch her bleed out while I ask again." Marcus's eyes flicked to the monitor. 64% complete. "The code," the woman repeated. Kira realized with cold clarity that Marcus was going to let her die rather than stop the upload. Not because he didn't care, but because the mission mattered more. Because 18 dead Marines mattered more. Because justice mattered more. She understood it. Hated it. But understood it. "I don't have a code," Marcus said. "It's automatic. You can't stop it." The woman's expression didn't change. She adjusted her aim slightly and fired. The suppressed round took Kira in the left thigh. The pain was instant and catastrophic, white-hot agony that turned her vision to static. She screamed and collapsed, clutching at the wound. Blood poured between her fingers, hot and slick. The woman advanced on her, gun lowering toward her knee. "Next one shatters the joint. After that, you'll never walk again." Marcus lunged.
Even wounded, even bleeding, he moved like a striking snake. He caught the woman's gun hand and twisted, forcing the barrel away from Kira. The woman drove her knee into his injured shoulder and he grunted in pain but didn't let go. They grappled in close quarters, brutal and efficient. The woman was faster, but Marcus was stronger and had reach. He slammed her against the workstation hard enough to crack the desk. She drove her elbow into his ribs. He hooked her leg and tried to take her down, but she rolled with it, turning the momentum into a throw that sent him crashing into the broken filing cabinet. Kira dragged herself toward the pistol Marcus had given her, leaving a blood trail across the concrete. Her leg was on fire. Every movement sent fresh waves of agony through her body, but she kept moving. The woman had Marcus pinned against the cabinet, one hand around his throat, the other going for a knife on her belt. Marcus blocked with his good arm, caught her wrist, and headbutted her hard enough that Kira heard the crack of breaking cartilage. The woman reeled back, blood pouring from her shattered nose. But she didn't go down. She smiled, actually smiled, and came at him again. Kira's fingers closed around the pistol grip. The upload progress, 77% complete. The woman pulled the knife and slashed at Marcus's throat. He jerked back and the blade opened a line across his chest, shallow but bleeding. She reversed the grip and stabbed downward. Marcus caught her wrist again, but his strength was fading. The knife inched closer to his heart. Kira raised the pistol. Her hands were shaking. Blood loss and adrenaline and shock made it hard to focus. She tried to remember what Marcus had told her. Safety off. Aim for center mass. Squeeze. Don't pull. But the woman was too close to Marcus. If Kira missed, she'd hit him instead. "Marcus, down!" she shouted. He didn't hesitate, didn't question. He dropped straight to the floor, arms covering his head. The woman had a split second to register what was happening before Kira fired. This time, she didn't miss. The round caught the woman in the hip, exactly where Marcus had told her to aim. The impact spun her sideways and she went down hard, the knife skittering away across the concrete. She tried to get up, but her leg wouldn't support her weight. Marcus rolled to his feet, grabbed the woman's own gun from where it had fallen, and trained it on her. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Marcus looked at Kira, still sprawled on the floor with blood pooling around her leg, and something in his expression cracked. "You're okay," he said. It sounded like a question and a prayer and a command all at once. "I've been better." The upload progress, 89% complete. Outside, engines were revving. The remaining contractors were regrouping, preparing for a final push. Through the hole in the roof, Kira could see the helicopter repositioning. A figure leaned out of the side door with something long and cylindrical on his shoulder. "RPG!" Marcus shouted. He grabbed Kira and hauled her behind the thickest section of concrete wall, just as the rocket-propelled grenade punched through what remained of the roof and detonated in the center of the room. The explosion was apocalyptic. The concussion wave lifted Kira off the ground and slammed her into the wall. Her ears went deaf except for a high-pitched ringing. Fire bloomed across the ceiling and walls. Shrapnel tore through the old equipment, shredding metal and plastic and anything else in its path. Marcus covered her body with his own, taking the brunt of the debris that rained down. Something heavy hit his back and he grunted but didn't move. When the smoke cleared enough to see, half the room was gone. The roof had completely collapsed in the center. Flames licked at the exposed support beams. The air was thick with smoke and chemical fumes. And on the workstation, miraculously still standing, though cracked and smoking, the monitor displayed a single message: upload complete. Files distributed to 47 recipients. Marcus stared at it like he couldn't believe it was real. Then he started laughing, a raw, broken sound that had nothing to do with humor and everything to do with a man who'd been running for so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to stop. Kira couldn't hear him through the ringing in her ears, but she could see his shoulders shaking. "Is it done?" she managed to ask. Marcus nodded. He pulled out the USB drive, somehow still intact, and crushed it under his boot. "It's done. Every congressional oversight committee, every major news outlet, every inspector general in the DOD. They all have it now. Rourke can't bury this. So we won? We're still alive. That's close enough." But the celebration was premature. Through the smoke and flames, the woman Marcus had fought, the one Kira had shot, was crawling toward something half buried in the rubble. Her face was a mask of blood and burns, but her eyes were still focused, still lethal. She grabbed what she was reaching for, a detonator, wired to charges Marcus hadn't seen. She smiled at him through broken teeth and pressed the button. Nothing happened. The woman's smile faded. She pressed the button again and again. Confusion replaced certainty in her eyes. Marcus crossed the room in 3 strides, kicked the detonator out of her hand, and zip-tied her wrists behind her back despite her struggles. "Charges are duds," he said. "I swept this place for explosives before I stored anything here. Found your little surprises in the foundation walls 2 years ago and replaced them with clay." The woman spat blood at his feet. "Rourke will kill you. He'll kill everyone you've ever known. Your family, your friends, every person who ever—" Marcus pressed a pressure point on her neck, and she went unconscious mid-sentence. Outside, the contractors were pulling back. Kira could see them on the remaining functional monitor, loading into their SUVs. The helicopter was banking away, gaining altitude. "They're leaving," she said, "because the upload's complete. Rourke just gave the order to abort. Right now he's probably burning every document he can find and preparing to go to ground." "Will it be enough? The evidence you sent?" "It's enough to start an investigation. After that," Marcus shrugged. "After that, it's out of my hands." Sirens wailed in the distance. Real ones this time. Police, probably the county sheriff. Someone must have reported the explosion. Marcus helped Kira to her feet. Her legs screamed in protest, and she had to lean heavily on him to stay upright. He wasn't in much better shape, bleeding from multiple wounds, moving like every step hurt. They limped toward the door together, stepping over debris and bodies and the ruins of Marcus's safe house. Outside, the night air was cold and clean. Kira sucked in deep breaths, trying to clear the smoke from her lungs. The forest was silent except for the approaching sirens and the crackle of flames behind them. Marcus lowered her to the ground near the fence line, propping her against a tree. He pulled off his jacket and tied it around her thigh as a makeshift tourniquet. The pressure made her gasp, but it slowed the bleeding. "We need to get our story straight," he said, "before the cops get here." "What story?" "We tell them the truth. We tell them part of the truth. We were attacked by armed men. We defended ourselves. We don't know why. Let the evidence speak for itself when the investigators start connecting dots." "Marcus, if we say too much too soon, Rourke's lawyers will bury us in procedure. Better to play it simple, confused. Let them think we're victims who got lucky." Kira wanted to argue, but she was too tired. Too much blood lost. Too much adrenaline crash. She just nodded. The sirens were close now, maybe a mile out. Marcus sat down beside her, his back against the same tree. For a moment they just breathed. 2 people who'd survived something they shouldn't have. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly. "For what?" "For not running. For shooting that woman. For everything. You saved my life first. Doesn't matter who started. Just matters that we're both still here." Kira looked at him, really looked at him. Under the blood and the bruises and the exhaustion, she saw someone who'd carried a terrible weight for years and had finally, impossibly, set it down. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we heal, we testify, we watch Rourke burn. And after that?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. I haven't thought past today in 3 years." The first police car crested the hill, lights flashing red and blue through the trees. But before it reached them, another sound cut through the night. A single engine, different from the others. A motorcycle, moving fast. Marcus's head snapped up. His hand went to the pistol at his belt. A figure on a black sport bike roared into the clearing, skidded to a stop 20 feet away, and pulled off their helmet. It was a man Kira had never seen before. Mid-40s, graying hair, wearing a suit that cost more than her car. But Marcus clearly recognized him. His entire body went rigid. "Director Vance," Marcus said. The title came out like a curse. The man dismounted and approached slowly, hands visible and empty. "Commander Thorne, we need to talk." "I've got nothing to say to CIA." "That's unfortunate, because in about 90 seconds, those police cars are going to arrive, and you're going to be arrested for murder, assault, theft of government property, and about 15 other charges I can think of off the top of my head. Those men attacked us. We defended ourselves. I know. I also know that without agency protection, you'll be dead in a cell before your arraignment. Rourke still has friends, deep ones." Marcus didn't move. "What do you want?" "I want to offer you a deal. You come work for me.
Off the books, full deniability, and I make all of this disappear. New identities, clean records, witness protection for anyone you care about. In exchange for what? In exchange for doing what you do best. Finding the traitors. Burning them out. Making sure what Rourke did never happens again. Kira's head was spinning. This was too much, too fast. She'd gone from eating salmon at a restaurant to bleeding out in a forest while spies offered backroom deals. Marcus looked at her. What do you think? Me? I'm just a nurse. You're the woman who saved my life twice and shot a contract killer to finish an upload that's going to take down a general. I'd say you've earned a vote. Kira looked at Director Vance, then at Marcus, then at the approaching police lights. She thought about the men in Trauma 1 with their fake badges and their syringe of poison. She thought about 18 dead Marines. She thought about how Rourke had smiled while talking about collateral damage. What happens to the evidence? She asked Vance. The files Marcus uploaded? They proceed, investigations will be opened, Rourke will face justice. That doesn't change. And we just disappear? You get to start over, new names, new lives, protection from anyone who might want revenge. Vance paused. Or you can stay here, face the courts, spend the next 5 years testifying while Rourke's people try to kill you in increasingly creative ways. Your choice. The police cars were pulling into the clearing now, doors opening, officers emerging with weapons drawn. Marcus stood and helped Kira to her feet. We need an answer now. Kira looked at the burning safe house, the bodies, the wreckage of a night that had started with dinner and ended with war. Okay, she said, but I have conditions. Vance raised an eyebrow. Such as? I want updates on Rourke's prosecution. I want to know every step of the investigation. And if it looks like he's going to walk, the deal's off and I testify anyway. Deal. And Marcus gets full medical care. Real doctors, not some back alley clinic. Already planned for. And she hesitated. And I want to finish my nursing degree. Wherever we end up, I'm not giving that up. Vance actually smiled. Done. Anything else? Marcus looked at her with something that might have been admiration. You negotiate like someone who's done this before. I negotiate like someone who's had to fight insurance companies for patient care. Same skill set. The police were surrounding them now, weapons raised, voices shouting commands to get on the ground. Vance pulled out a badge, a real one this time, and held it high. Stand down! Federal operation! These people are in protective custody. The officers hesitated, confused, looking to their sergeant for guidance. In that moment of uncertainty, Vance turned to Marcus and Kira and said, very quietly, Last chance. Yes or no? Marcus looked at Kira one more time. She nodded. Yes, Marcus said. Vance made a hand signal and 2 black SUVs that Kira hadn't even noticed pulled into the clearing from a different direction. Men in suits emerged, already coordinating with the local police, showing credentials, taking control of the scene with bureaucratic efficiency. Kira was lifted onto a stretcher. Medical personnel swarmed her, real ones, with proper equipment. Someone started an IV. Someone else cut away her blood-soaked jeans to access the gunshot wound. The pain meds hit her system, and the world went soft and distant. She tried to keep her eyes open, tried to see what was happening to Marcus, but the drugs were strong and the blood loss had been severe, and consciousness was slipping away like water through her fingers. The last thing she saw before the darkness took her was Marcus in the back of another ambulance, watching her with those intense eyes, and Director Vance making a phone call that would either save them both or bury them forever. Then nothing. When Kira woke up, she was in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and lies. The ceiling was white and featureless, broken only by a smoke detector and a fluorescent light panel that hummed with the particular frequency of institutional infrastructure. Kira stared at it for 10 full seconds before her brain assembled enough context to understand where she was. Hospital room, private, no window, one door. Camera in the corner with a blinking red light. Not Bridgeton Regional, somewhere else. She tried to sit up and pain lanced through her left thigh, sharp enough to make her gasp. The bullet wound. Right, someone had shot her, the woman with the obsidian eyes and the knife and the smile that belonged on a predator. Kira's hand went to her leg and found thick bandages, surgical tape,
The familiar architecture of post-operative care. Professional work. Clean sutures, proper dressing changes. She'd been out for a while, at least 12 hours, maybe more, judging by the stiffness in her joints and the cotton mouth that suggested sustained anesthesia. The IV in her left arm ran to a pole with 2 bags, saline and something else, probably antibiotics. Her vitals were displayed on a monitor beside the bed, heart rate elevated but steady, blood pressure low but acceptable, O2 saturation at 97%. She was alive. Drugged, wounded, and locked in an unmarked room under surveillance, but alive. The door opened and a man in a white coat entered. Mid-50s, gray at the temples, wedding ring on his left hand. He carried a tablet and had the efficient, slightly detached manner of someone who'd delivered 1,000 diagnoses and stopped getting emotionally invested around number 50. Ms. Dawson, I'm Dr. Fisher. How are you feeling? Like I got shot in the leg and blown up in a bunker. That's accurate. Fisher pulled up a chair and sat, scrolling through something on the tablet. The bullet went through your quadriceps without hitting the femoral artery. Very lucky. We removed some fragments, debrided the wound, and closed it in layers. You'll need physical therapy, but full recovery is expected. Where am I? A private medical facility, Northern Virginia. Virginia. That was 1,000 miles from Oregon. She'd been unconscious during transport, sedated probably, moved like cargo while Director Vance erased her trail. I want to see Marcus Thorne. Fisher didn't look up from the tablet. Commander Thorne is in another wing, also recovering. Is he okay? Define okay. He had a chest tube reinserted, a shoulder wound debrided and sutured, 2 cracked ribs, and blood loss requiring transfusion. But he's stable, conscious, extremely irritated about being confined to bed rest. That sounded like Marcus. Kira felt some of the tension in her chest ease slightly. When can I leave? When you're cleared. Another 48 hours. Minimum. I don't have 48 hours. Fisher finally looked at her, one eyebrow raised. Why not? Because Rourke was still out there. Because the evidence was uploaded but not yet prosecuted. Because Vance had made promises that sounded too good to be true, which meant they probably were. But she didn't say any of that. Instead, she just said, I need to talk to Director Vance. He's expected this afternoon. I need to talk to him now. Fisher stood, tucking the tablet under his arm. I'll pass along the message. In the meantime, rest. Your body's been through significant trauma. He left. The lock clicked behind him. Kira lay back against the pillows and stared at the ceiling again. Her mind was racing despite the pain meds, running through everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. The restaurant, the hospital, the safe house, the explosion, the deal. She'd agreed to disappear, to become someone else, to trade her life for protection and a shot at justice. Had that been the right call? Or had she just sold herself to a different set of handlers? The door opened again 10 minutes later. This time it wasn't Dr. Fisher. Director Vance walked in wearing the same expensive suit, looking like he'd slept 8 hours and had a full breakfast. He pulled the chair closer to the bed and sat with the relaxed posture of someone who owned the room. Miss Dawson, good to see you awake. Where's Marcus? 3 doors down. Would you like me to arrange a video call, or would you prefer to waste time with more questions you already know the answers to? Kira bristled. I want to see the evidence, the files Marcus uploaded. I want confirmation they're being investigated. Vance pulled out a phone, tapped a few buttons, and handed it to her. On the screen was a news article from the Washington Post, dated this morning. DoD Inspector General opens investigation into weapons trafficking allegations. Anonymous leak implicates senior officers in illegal arms sales. Kira scanned the article. It was vague on details, unnamed sources, pending investigations, no direct mention of Rourke, but it was real, public, the kind of thing that couldn't be swept under classified rugs. This doesn't prove Rourke will face charges, she said. It proves the wheels are turning. The files Marcus sent included bank records, shipping manifests, classified correspondence, the kind of evidence that congressional oversight committees dream about. Rourke is finished. It's just a matter of how loud the ending gets. Then why do Marcus and I need new identities? Because Rourke knows he's finished, which makes him desperate, And desperate men with $40 million and a network of contractors do unpredictable things, like ordering hits on witnesses. Kira handed the phone back. You said you'd protect us. I am protecting you by making you ghosts. For how long? Until Rourke is either in custody or dead. Could be weeks, could be months. And what do we do in the meantime? Vance leaned back, steepling his fingers. That depends. How attached are you to being Kira Dawson? She didn't answer immediately. Her name was her name. Her identity was built on 6 years of nursing school, clinical rotations, night shifts in the ICU. It was the signature on her apartment lease and her student loan debt and the voicemails from her mother asking when she'd visit. But it was also the name on file at Bridgeton Regional. The name connected to a man who'd nearly died at Table 6. The name that Rourke's people could trace in about 90 seconds. Not very, she said quietly. Good, because Kira Dawson died in a car accident 3 hours ago. Single vehicle collision on Highway 26 just outside Bridgeton. No survivors. Body too badly burned for open casket. Kira's stomach twisted. You faked my death. I gave you a clean exit. Your mother will grieve. Your co-workers will send flowers. And in 6 months, when Rourke's in Leavenworth or grave, you can decide whether to come back from the dead or stay whoever you become. That's survival, which is what you signed up for when you said yes in that clearing. Kira wanted to argue, but the logic was airtight. If she was alive, she was a target. If she was dead, she was safe. Cold, brutal, and effective. What about Marcus? Commander Thorne is officially MIA, presumed dead. His body was never recovered from the safe house explosion. The Navy will hold a memorial service. His name will go on a wall, very tragic. Does he know? He suggested it. Of course he did. Marcus had been planning his own disappearance for 3 years. This was just the final step. So who do I become? Kira asked. Vance pulled a folder from inside his jacket and set it on the bed. Meet Rachel Kincaid, 32 years old. Registered nurse, licensed in Maryland, moved to the D.C. area 6 months ago. Works at a private clinic in Arlington. No family, no significant romantic history, no red flags. Kira opened the folder. Inside was a driver's license with her face and a different name, a social security card, bank statements, employment records, an entire life, fabricated and documented. This is insane, she whispered. This is tradecraft, and you'll learn it fast or you won't last long. I'm not a spy. No, you're a nurse who saved a SEAL's life and helped bring down a corrupt general, which makes you more dangerous than most of the spies I employ. Vance stood. You've got 72 hours to recover. After that, you and Marcus will be relocated to a safe house while the investigation proceeds. You'll receive new phones, new credentials, new everything. Questions? Kira had 100 questions, but one rose above the rest. Why are you doing this, really? The CIA doesn't run witness protection out of the goodness of its heart. Vance smiled, a thin, cold expression that didn't reach his eyes. You're right. I'm doing this because Marcus Thorne is an asset I've been trying to recruit for 5 years, and you're leverage. As long as you're alive, he'll cooperate. As long as he cooperates, I get a weapon I can point at every corrupt officer and contractor bleeding this country dry. So I'm bait. You're an investment. Try not to die. He left. Kira sat alone in the white room, staring at the fake ID with her real face, and wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. 72 hours later, Kira walked out of the medical facility on crutches, her left leg bound in a brace that limited her movement to a stiff, awkward shuffle. The parking lot was empty except for a black sedan with tinted windows. The driver's door opened and Marcus stepped out. He looked better. Still pale, still moving carefully, but the wildness was gone from his eyes. He wore civilian clothes, jeans, a gray Henley, boots, and a sling on his left arm to protect the shoulder wound. You look terrible, Kira said. You look worse. Liar. He almost smiled. Almost. Then he opened the passenger door and helped her into the seat, adjusting the crutches in the back before closing the door and walking around to the driver's side. They drove in silence for 10 minutes, leaving the medical facility behind and merging onto I-95 south. The world outside was ordinary: strip malls, gas stations, commuter traffic, No black SUVs, no helicopters. Just normal people living normal lives.
Where are we going? Kira asked. Safe house, about an hour south, small town called Riverside.
We'll stay there while the investigation proceeds. Together? Vance thinks it's safer if we're not separated. Harder to coordinate an attack if the targets are in the same location. Or easier if someone finds us. Yeah, that too. More silence. Kira watched the landscape blur past, trying to reconcile the fact that this was her life now. Running, hiding, waiting for someone else to deliver justice while she played dead. Do you regret it? Marcus asked suddenly. Regret what? Helping me. At the restaurant, you could have walked away. Kira thought about it. About the man collapsing at table 6, lips turning blue, chest refusing to move. About the choice she'd made in that split second to act instead of retreat. No, she said, I don't regret it. Even now, knowing what it cost? Even now. Marcus nodded, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. Good, because I need you to understand something. What we did, what you did, it mattered. Those files are going to bring down Rourke and everyone who helped him. 18 Marines get justice, families get answers. That's worth a bullet in the leg and a fake ID. You sound very sure. I am sure, because I've spent 3 years waiting for this moment, and now it's happening. They drove for another 20 minutes before Marcus spoke again. Vance offered me a job. I know. He told me I'm leveraged to make sure you take it. Marcus's jaw tightened. I'm not going to let him use you like that. You don't have a choice. Neither of us do. We took the deal. We can walk away, right now, disappear on our own terms. And get killed in a week when Rourke's people find us? No thanks. I'll take the protection. Even if it means working for someone who sees you as a tool? Kira looked at him. Marcus, I've been a tool my whole career. Every hospital administrator who cut staffing ratios to save money. Every doctor who ignored my recommendations because I'm a nurse. Every insurance company that denied care I knew would save lives. At least Vance is honest about it. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, You're tougher than you look. I'm an ICU nurse. Tough is a survival requirement. The safe house turned out to be a small cottage on the edge of a town so small it didn't merit a stoplight. White clapboard siding, a covered porch, a gravel driveway that ended at a detached garage. The nearest neighbor was half a mile away through dense woods. Marcus parked and killed the engine. Welcome to Riverside. It's cute. It's isolated, which is the point. They went inside. The interior was sparse but functional. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room with furniture that looked government-issued. No personal touches, no warmth, just a place to exist while waiting for the world to catch up. Kira claimed the bedroom on the left and collapsed onto the bed without bothering to unpack. Her leg was throbbing despite the pain meds. Exhaustion pulled at her like a riptide. She was asleep in minutes. When she woke, it was dark outside and the smell of cooking food drifted from the kitchen. She hobbled out on her crutches and found Marcus at the stove, one-handedly attempting to flip something in a pan. What are you making? Eggs or egg-shaped disasters? Hard to tell yet. Let me. You're supposed to be resting. And you're supposed to have that arm immobilized. Give me the spatula. He handed it over without argument. Kira took over at the stove, adjusting the heat and rescuing the eggs before they burned. Marcus set the table. 2 plates, 2 forks, a loaf of bread that looked store-bought. They ate in silence that wasn't quite comfortable but wasn't hostile either. Just 2 people who'd survived something terrible and didn't know how to talk about it yet. Kira was halfway through her eggs when her new phone buzzed. She'd left it on the counter. Marcus retrieved it and handed it to her. A text from an unknown number. No name, just a message. Check the news. Now. Kira opened a browser and searched for Rourke's name. The top result was from CNN, posted 11 minutes ago. Retired General Adrian Rourke found dead in apparent suicide. Her blood went cold. Marcus leaned over her shoulder reading the headline. His expression went very still. Very dangerous. Kira clicked the article. Retired 3-star General Adrian Rourke was found dead this evening at his estate in McLean, Virginia. Preliminary reports indicate a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Rourke had been under investigation by the Department of Defense Inspector General for alleged involvement in illegal weapons trafficking. He leaves behind a wife and 2 adult children. No note was found at the scene. Kira set the phone down slowly. He's dead. No. Marcus's voice was flat, hard. He's not. The article says, I know what it says, and it's a lie. How do you know? Because Rourke doesn't quit. He doesn't fold. He fights until there's nothing left to fight with, and then he burns the evidence and disappears. Marcus grabbed his own phone and dialed. Someone answered on the second ring. Vance, it's Thorne. Tell me Rourke's body is on a slab with confirmed biometrics. A pause. Then Marcus's expression shifted from anger to something colder. That's what I thought, he said, and hung up. Kira felt her stomach drop. What did he say? Body's still at the scene. Medical examiner hasn't arrived yet. No positive ID beyond visual confirmation by local police. So it could be someone else. It's definitely someone else. Rourke set this up, faked his death, probably with help from someone inside the investigation. Now he's in the wind with $40 million in a grudge. Then we're not safe here. No, we're not. As if on cue, the lights went out. The cottage plunged into darkness. Outside, the night pressed against the windows like something alive. No street lights, no neighbors. Just forest and silence. Marcus moved immediately, pulling Kira away from the window and positioning her behind the kitchen counter. He grabbed something from his waistband, a pistol Kira hadn't known he was carrying, and chambered a round. Stay low, he whispered. Don't move unless I say. Kira's heart was hammering. Her injured leg screamed in protest as she crouched, but she ignored it. She could hear Marcus moving through the cottage, checking sight lines, calculating angles. A sound outside. Gravel crunching, footsteps, multiple sets. Marcus returned to the kitchen and crouched beside her. 4 hostiles, maybe 5, surrounding the house. How do you know? Because that's what I do. Do we call Vance? No signal. They're jamming. Then what? Glass shattered in the back bedroom. A canister bounced across the floor, hissing, spewing white smoke. Tear gas. Marcus grabbed Kira's arm and hauled her toward the front door. They made it 3 steps before the door exploded inward, and a figure in tactical gear stepped through the smoke. Marcus fired twice. The figure went down. But 2 more pushed through behind him, weapons raised. Marcus shoved Kira toward the garage. Go! Now! She ran, hobbled, really, crutches forgotten, legs screaming, and crashed through the connecting door into the garage. Marcus was right behind her, firing backward through the doorway to keep the attackers pinned. The garage held Marcus's truck and something else, a dirt bike, small and fast, leaning against the far wall. Can you ride? Marcus shouted over the gunfire. Not with this leg. Then hold on. He threw his good leg over the bike, kicked it to life, and pulled Kira onto the seat behind him. She wrapped her arms around his waist as he gunned the throttle and smashed straight through the garage door. Wood splintered. Metal screamed. The bike launched into the night, tires spitting gravel. Behind them, muzzle flashes lit up the darkness. Bullets cracked through the air. One hit the bike's rear fender with a metallic ping. Marcus didn't slow down. He aimed the bike toward the tree line and opened the throttle fully. They hit the forest at 40 miles per hour, branches whipping past, roots and rocks jarring every bone. Kira held on with everything she had, her injured leg bouncing against the bike frame, pain spiking with each impact. She could hear engines behind them, vehicles trying to follow, crashing through underbrush. Marcus took them deeper into the woods, following trails that maybe only he could see. 5 minutes. 10. The sounds of pursuit faded slightly. Then the bike's engine coughed, sputtered, died. Marcus kicked the stand down and jumped off, checking the fuel line. Hit! We're leaking. How far did we get? Maybe 2 miles. Not far enough. Behind them, headlights appeared through the trees. Closer now. Marcus pulled Kira off the bike and into a thick stand of underbrush. They pressed flat to the ground, breathing hard, while an SUV rolled past 30 feet away. Searchlight sweeping. men's voices calling coordinates. When the vehicle moved on, Marcus keyed his phone. Still no signal. "We need high ground," he whispered. "Better reception, better sight lines." "In which direction?" He pointed northeast. "Hill, about half a mile. Old fire tower. If we can reach it, if." "Yeah." They moved through the forest like ghosts, Marcus supporting Kira's weight when the terrain got rough. Her leg was past pain now, into a kind of numb horror that she knew would come back to haunt her later. Behind them, the search was intensifying. More vehicles, more lights, dogs barking in the distance. They reached the base of the hill and started climbing. Kira's lungs burned. Her hands were cut from grabbing branches. Sweat poured down her back despite the cool night air. Halfway up, Marcus's phone buzzed. Signal. 1 bar. He dialed Vance. "We're blown," he said the moment the connection opened. "Riverside is compromised. Multiple hostiles, professional gear. They knew exactly where to find us." Vance's voice came through tinny and broken. "Your position?" "Fire tower, northeast of..." The line cut out. Marcus cursed and redialed. Nothing. Below them, lights were converging on the hill. They'd been spotted. Marcus grabbed Kira's hand and pulled her upward. The fire tower loomed ahead, a skeletal metal structure rising 40 feet above the trees. The stairs were rusted and missing bolts, but it was the only option. They climbed. Each step groaned under their weight. Kira didn't look down. At the top was a small observation platform, enclosed on 3 sides by safety railings. Marcus positioned Kira in the corner and took up position at the railing with his pistol. "How many rounds do you have left?" Kira asked. 6, maybe 7. "And how many hostiles?" "More than 7. Below, men were spreading out around the base of the tower. Tactical lights swept across the metal framework. Someone shouted orders. Then a voice cut through the darkness, amplified, cold, familiar. "Commander Thorne, I'm impressed. You made it farther than I expected." Kira's blood froze. General Adrian Rourke stood at the base of the tower, very much alive, flanked by armed men. Marcus leaned over the railing. "You're supposed to be dead." "So are you. Funny how that works." Rourke smiled up at them. "Come down, Marcus. Let's talk like professionals." "I've got nothing to say to you." "Even if I tell you that Director Vance sold you out? That he's the one who told me where to find you?" Marcus didn't respond. But Kira saw his grip tighten on the pistol. Rourke continued. "Vance made a deal. My network and my money in exchange for your location. He gets to dismantle my operation from the inside. I get to tie up loose ends. Everyone wins." "Except us," Kira said. Rourke's gaze shifted to her. "Ah, the nurse. The woman who started all this trouble. If you just let Marcus die on that restaurant floor, none of this would have happened. If you hadn't committed treason, none of this would have happened." Rourke actually laughed. "Treason. Such a quaint word. I prefer strategic asset reallocation." Marcus raised his pistol and fired. The round sparked off the metal railing 6 inches from Rourke's head. The men around him scattered, raising weapons. Rourke didn't flinch. "That was your warning shot. You don't have enough bullets for what comes next." "Maybe not, but I've got enough to take you with me." "Do you?" "Because I'm standing behind 3 inches of ballistic steel plating. You'd need a rifle to punch through, and you don't have one." He was right. The pistol was useless at this range against that kind of protection. "So here's what happens," Rourke said. "You come down. You and the nurse both. We'll make it quick, clean, no suffering." "Or?" Marcus asked. "Or my men cut the tower supports and you fall 40 feet onto rocks. Then we take our time." Kira looked at Marcus. His jaw was set, eyes calculating, running scenarios that all ended badly. "There's a third option," she said quietly. "What's that?" She pointed to the northeast where the first gray light of dawn was just starting to break. And in that direction, barely visible through the trees, red and blue lights were flashing. Police. Multiple vehicles, converging fast. Marcus's phone buzzed. Vance's number. He answered on speaker. "Thorne, still alive?" "For now." "Good. Because I didn't sell you out. I baited the trap.
Rourke's people have been monitoring your position for the last hour. Local police, FBI, and military CID are 3 minutes out. I suggest you keep him talking." The line went dead. Below, Rourke had seen the lights too. His expression shifted from confident to calculating.
"You set me up," he said to the empty air. "No," Marcus called down. "You set yourself up. The moment you came here instead of running, you proved Vance right. You can't help yourself. You had to tie up loose ends personally." Rourke pulled a pistol from his jacket. "Then I'll finish it now." He aimed up at the platform. Kira grabbed Marcus and pulled him down as shots rang out. Bullets punched through the metal flooring, sparking and ricocheting. Then sirens wailed and vehicles roared into the clearing. Spotlights blazed. A voice on a megaphone shouted commands to drop weapons and get on the ground. Rourke's men scattered. Some ran. Some dropped their guns and surrendered. Rourke himself turned and sprinted toward the tree line. He made it 20 feet before a figure stepped out of the shadows and drove a tactical baton into his knee. Rourke went down screaming. The figure zip-tied his wrists and hauled him upright. It was the woman from the safe house, the one Kira had shot. Her face was still bruised, her movement stiff, but her eyes were clear and furious. She dragged Rourke back toward the police line and threw him at the feet of a man in an FBI windbreaker. "General Adrian Rourke," she said, "wanted for treason, arms trafficking, and attempted murder. He's all yours." The FBI agent stared at her. "Who the hell are you?" "Nobody. I was never here." She turned and melted back into the forest before anyone could stop her. On the tower platform, Kira and Marcus sat with their backs against the railing, listening to the chaos below. Officers were handcuffing suspects. Rourke was shouting about lawyers and immunity deals that nobody was listening to. "Is it over?" Kira asked. Marcus watched Rourke being shoved into the back of a police car. "Yeah, it's over." "So what happens now?" "Now we testify, watch him burn, then figure out what comes after." "And the deal with Vance?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "That's up to you. You want to stay Rachel Kincaid? Start over somewhere new? I'll back whatever you choose." Kira looked at the fake ID in her pocket, then at the sunrise breaking over the trees. Kira Dawson was officially dead, but Rachel Kincaid didn't have to be just a ghost. She could be a second chance. "I'll think about it," she said. They sat together and watched the sun rise on a world where justice, impossibly, had won. The FBI agents brought ladders and helped them down from the fire tower as the forest filled with law enforcement. Kira's leg had gone from numb to screaming somewhere around the third rung, and by the time her feet hit solid ground, she was shaking with exhaustion and pain. A paramedic tried to guide her toward an ambulance, but she waved him off. "I'm fine." "Ma'am, you're bleeding through your bandages." She looked down. He was right. Dark red was seeping through the brace, staining her jeans. She'd torn something during the climb, maybe all the stitches. "Later," she said. Marcus was 10 feet away, surrounded by 3 men in suits who were firing questions at him faster than he could answer. He looked past them, caught Kira's eye, and the expression on his face said everything. "Stay close. Don't talk to anyone without me." But before Kira could reach him, a hand closed gently on her elbow. She turned and found herself face to face with Director Vance. He looked exactly as composed as he had in the hospital room, suit pressed, expression neutral, eyes calculating every angle. "Ms. Dawson, or should I say Ms. Kincaid, we need to talk. I'm not going anywhere with you until I know what the hell just happened. What happened is that General Rourke fell into a trap 3 weeks in the making. What happened is that you and Commander Thorne are now the federal government's star witnesses in the biggest treason case since Aldrich Ames. What happened is that you're about to become very famous, very fast, unless we move quickly." Kira pulled her arm free. "You used us as bait." "I used Rourke's arrogance as bait. You and Marcus were simply the lure he couldn't resist. People could have died. People were always going to die. I just made sure it wasn't you." Vance gestured toward a black SUV parked at the edge of the clearing. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking. Then you can tell me to go to hell if you want." Kira glanced back at Marcus. He was still talking to the suits, but one of them had handcuffs visible on his belt. Not yet deployed, but present. a reminder that Marcus was technically still a wanted man until someone in the chain of command cleared him. "Fine," Kira said. 5 minutes. They walked to the SUV. Vance opened the back door and she slid in, grateful to be off her feet. He sat across from her in the rear-facing seat. The driver's compartment was separated by soundproof glass. "How's the leg?" Vance asked. "Terrible. What do you want?" To explain what happens next. Rourke is in custody. His network is being rolled up as we speak, contractors, financiers, the officers who helped him move weapons. It's going to be a circus. Congressional hearings, media coverage, book deals, and movie rights. "I don't want book deals." "I know, which is why I'm offering you a different option." Vance pulled out a tablet and set it on the seat between them. On the screen was a document, dense legal text, multiple pages. "This is a cooperation agreement," he said. "You testify in closed session. No cameras, no media. Your identity stays sealed under national security protocols. In exchange, you get full immunity for any actions taken during the incident, a government stipend, and continued protection." Kira scanned the document. It was exactly what he described, with one addition buried in subsection 7. "This says I agree to future consultation on matters of national security at the director's discretion." What does that mean? "It means if I need someone with your specific skill set, I can call you. I'm a nurse, not a spy. You're a woman who performed emergency surgery with a kitchen knife and shot a contract killer to complete a data upload. That's not just nursing, that's operational thinking under pressure, and it's valuable." Kira handed the tablet back. "I'm not interested in becoming an asset. You already are one. The question is whether you're a protected asset or an exposed one." Vance leaned forward slightly. "Here's the reality, Miss Dawson. The moment you save Marcus Thorne's life, you entered a world that doesn't let people walk away cleanly. Rourke had $40 million and a network of killers. You think he was the only one. There are a dozen more just like him, and some of them are going to be very interested in the nurse who helped bring down a 3-star general. So you're saying I don't have a choice. I'm saying you have 2 choices. Work with me, stay protected, and maybe do some good along the way, or refuse and spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder." Kira stared at him. His expression was calm, almost sympathetic, but there was steel underneath. This wasn't a negotiation. It was an ultimatum wrapped in polite language. "I need to talk to Marcus," she said. "Of course, but understand something. Marcus has already signed his agreement. He's back on the payroll as of this morning. Contractor status, full deniability, deep cover operations. He made his choice." That shouldn't have surprised her. Marcus had spent 3 years preparing to disappear. Joining Vance's shadow world was just the next logical step, but it still felt like betrayal. "Did he know you were going to recruit me too?" "He suggested it, actually, said you were wasted in a hospital ICU. Kira laughed, a short, bitter sound. "He doesn't know me at all." "Maybe. Or maybe he knows exactly who you are and what you're capable of." Vance stood, preparing to exit. "You've got 24 hours to decide. After that, the offer expires and you're on your own. Think carefully." He left, closing the door with a soft click. Kira sat alone in the SUV, staring at the tablet. Outside, the sun was fully up now, turning the forest golden. Police were processing the scene, cataloging weapons, taking statements. Marcus was being led toward a different vehicle. Not handcuffed, but flanked by agents who weren't taking chances. He looked back once, caught her watching through the tinted window, and nodded. A small gesture. Reassurance, maybe. Or apology. Then they put him in the car and drove away. Well, 24 hours turned into 48, while Kira was stuck in a hospital bed for the second time in a week. This time it was Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in Bethesda, Maryland, where surgeons reopened her leg wound, removed debris she'd ground into the muscle during the climb, and put everything back together with stronger sutures and a lecture about not running from armed mercenaries on fresh bullet wounds. Dr. Fisher visited on the second day, carrying the same tablet and the same detached professionalism. "You tore the vastus lateralis pretty badly," he said, reviewing her chart. "No permanent damage, but you're looking at 8 weeks of physical therapy minimum. Maybe 12. When can I leave?" When you sign the release forms, which you can't do until you make a decision about the cooperation agreement. So Vance had enlisted the medical staff too. Of course he had. Has anyone told my mother I'm alive? Kira asked. Fisher looked uncomfortable. That's above my clearance level. That's a no. Ms. Dawson, Rachel, if I'm supposed to be dead, you should probably use the right name. Fisher closed the chart. For what it's worth, I think you're getting a raw deal. But I also think Vance is right about the danger. Rourke had friends. Some of them are still out there. And signing Vance's agreement protects me from them? It protects you from being alone against them. After he left, Kira stared at the ceiling and did the math. Her apartment lease in Bridgeton was in Kira Dawson's name. Her bank account, her student loans, her entire financial existence, all tied to a woman who was legally dead. Rachel Kincaid had a bank account with $10,000 in it, seed money from Vance, and nothing else. No credit history, no employment beyond a fake clinic in Arlington, no life. If she walked away from Vance's offer, she'd be starting from zero with a target on her back. If she took it, she'd be trading one kind of cage for another. The door opened and Marcus walked in. He looked better than he had at the fire tower, clean, rested, wearing actual clothes instead of blood-stained tactical gear. The sling was gone from his arm, though he still moved stiffly. You're up, Kira said. So are you. How's the leg? Attached, barely. She watched him pull a chair close to the bed. Fisher says I can't leave until I sign Vance's paperwork. Yeah, he pulled the same thing with me. And you signed. I did. Why? Marcus was quiet for a moment, choosing his words. Because I've been running ops for 10 years, and I'm good at it. Because Rourke wasn't an anomaly. He was a symptom. And because if I don't help hunt down the others, they'll keep bleeding the system and getting people killed. So you're a true believer. I'm a pragmatist. I do what I'm good at. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. But that's me. You're different. You didn't sign up for this. You were just trying to save a life. And now I'm leveraged to keep you compliant. Vance told you that? He didn't have to. It's obvious. Marcus nodded slowly. You're right. He is using you to control me. But that doesn't mean the danger isn't real. Rourke's people know your face. They know what you did. Some of them are going to want revenge. So I should sign because I'm scared? You should sign because you're smart and because... He hesitated. Because I'd like to know you're protected. Kira studied his face. There was something there she hadn't seen before. Vulnerability, maybe. Or guilt. This isn't your fault, she said. Isn't it? If I hadn't collapsed in that restaurant, then 18 Marines still wouldn't have justice. Rourke would still be selling weapons, and I'd still be working night shifts in an ICU, wondering if any of it mattered. She paused. What happened happened. I don't regret it, but I'm not going to spend the rest of my life being your anchor. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking? Marcus stood, paced to the window, looked out at the Maryland skyline. I'm asking you to think about what you want. Not what Vance wants, not what I want. What do you want? Kira hadn't expected the question. She'd spent the last week reacting to the collapse, the shooting, the chase, the deal. She hadn't stopped to consider what she actually wanted from any of this. I want to finish my degree, she said finally. I want to work in a hospital again. I want to stop running. Then don't sign. Walk away. I'll make sure Vance keeps his protection in place even without the agreement. Can you do that? I can try. It was the most honest answer he'd given her. No guarantees, no promises, just effort. Kira looked at the tablet Fisher had left on the bedside table. The cooperation agreement. The gilded cage. What if I sign but set conditions? She asked. What if I agree to consult but only on medical cases? Only when it's about saving lives, not running ops. Marcus turned from the window. Vance won't like that. I don't care what Vance likes. I'm not a soldier. I'm not a spy. But I am a nurse, and if he wants access to that, he plays by my rules. A slow smile spread across Marcus's face. You're going to be a problem for him. Good. I'll set up a meeting. You, me, Vance. Renegotiate the terms. When? Today, if you're up for it. Kira pushed herself upright, ignoring the protest from her leg. "I'm up for it." The meeting took place in a conference room 3 floors down, secured behind biometric locks and soundproofing that made Kira's ears pop when the door sealed. Vance was already there, sitting at the head of a polished table with 2 other people Kira didn't recognize. A woman in a Navy dress uniform with commander's stripes, and a man in a civilian suit who had "lawyer" written all over him. Marcus and Kira sat across from them. The power dynamic was obvious and deliberate. Vance didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Commander Hayes, this is Ms. Rachel Kincaid. Ms. Kincaid, Commander Hayes oversees medical integration for our field operations. Mr. Breslin is our legal counsel." Hayes nodded. Breslin didn't react at all. "Ms. Kincaid has some concerns about the cooperation agreement," Vance continued. "I've agreed to hear them." Kira slid the tablet across the table. "I'll sign, but not this version." Breslin picked up the tablet, scanned it, and looked at Vance. "What changes are you proposing?" 3 things. First, I consult only on medical cases. Field medicine, trauma response, evacuation protocols. Nothing operational. I don't gather intelligence, I don't carry weapons, and I don't run ops. Breslin made a note. Acceptable with review. What else? Second, I finished my nursing degree. Full-time enrollment, no restrictions. If I'm going to advise on medical issues, I need to stay current. Hayes spoke for the first time. "Which program?" "Johns Hopkins, if they'll take me. University of Maryland, if not." "We can make that happen," Hayes said. "Tuition covered as part of the consulting package." Vance's expression didn't change, but Kira saw the slight tightening around his eyes. He didn't like being dictated to. "And third?" Breslin asked. "Third, my mother gets told I'm alive. Not everything, not the details. But she gets to know I didn't die in a car accident." Silence. Vance leaned back in his chair. "That's a security risk. That's non-negotiable. You want my cooperation, she gets the truth. Limited version, controlled contact, whatever protocols you need. But she knows. If she tells anyone, she won't. She's a librarian in rural Oregon who hasn't spoken to more than 5 people in the last year. She's not a security threat." Vance looked at Hayes. Hayes looked at Breslin. Some silent communication passed between them. "It can be managed," Hayes said carefully. "Supervised contact. We script the conversation. She thinks you're in witness protection for an unrelated case." "Fine." Breslin made another note. "Anything else?" Kira glanced at Marcus. He gave a slight nod. "Go ahead." "One more thing. Marcus Thorne is not my handler. We're not partners. We're 2 people who went through something traumatic together. If you try to use him to control me or use me to control him, the deal's off and I walk." Vance's jaw tightened. "You're not in a position to make ultimatums." "Yes, I am, because you need me more than I need you. You've got a dozen operations running right now where field medicine is the difference between success and catastrophic failure. You've got operators bleeding out because the nearest hospital is 6 hours away and your medics don't have the training. I've read the after-action reports. I know where your system breaks down." Hayes' eyebrows went up. "How did you access those reports?" "I didn't. Marcus did, last night, while you were all patting yourselves on the back for catching Rourke." Kira leaned forward. "Here's the reality, Director Vance. I'm offering you expertise you can't buy. Combat nursing, trauma response, critical care under impossible conditions. But only if you treat me like a professional consultant instead of a controlled asset." The room was very quiet. Then Vance smiled. A real one this time, not the cold calculation she'd seen before. "Commander Hayes, what's your assessment?" Hayes looked at Kira with something that might have been respect. "She's right. We lose more personnel to preventable medical complications than enemy fire. If she can reduce that, she's worth the accommodation." "Breslin?" The lawyer shrugged. "The terms are unusual but legally sound. I can draft a revised agreement by end of day." Vance turned back to Kira. "You drive a hard bargain, Ms. Kincaid." "I learned from the best. Hospital administrators are sharks. You're just better dressed." He actually laughed. "All right, we'll do it your way. Revised agreement, medical consultation only, degree program, and limited contact with your mother. But understand something, The moment you become a liability instead of an asset, the protections end. Are we clear? Crystal. Then welcome to the team. Vance stood and extended his hand. Kira shook it. His grip was firm, professional, and carried the weight of a bargain she'd just bound herself to. As they left the conference room, Marcus fell into step beside her. That was impressive, he said quietly. That was survival. There's a difference. Is there? Kira didn't answer. They walked in silence to the elevator, rode it up to her floor, stopped outside her room. What happens now? Marcus asked. Now I heal, finish PT, start school in the fall, figure out what Rachel Kincaid's life looks like. And after that? After that, maybe I take a consulting job or two. See if I'm any good at this. Marcus nodded. If you ever need backup, I'll call someone else. No offense, but you're a magnet for trouble. Fair. He started to leave, then stopped. Kira, Rachel, whoever you decide to be, thank you. For everything. You already thanked me. I know, but I'll probably keep doing it. He smiled, genuine this time, without the shadows. Try not to get shot again. Try not to collapse in any more restaurants. He left. Kira went back into her room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. The revised cooperation agreement would arrive tomorrow. She'd sign it, start the next chapter, become someone new while holding on to the pieces of herself that mattered. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but it was the life she'd chosen. And that, somehow, made all the difference. 6 weeks later, Kira, Rachel, sat in a lecture hall at Johns Hopkins School of Nursing, surrounded by students 10 years younger than her, listening to a professor explain the pathophysiology of septic shock. Her legs still ached when it rained, and she still woke up sometimes expecting to smell smoke and burning metal. But she was alive. She was learning. And somewhere in Virginia, a man named Marcus Thorne was hunting down the next Adrian Rourke while she got to build something that wasn't about survival. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Congressional hearing scheduled. Rourke pleading not guilty. Trial starts in 3 months. Testimony required. Vance. Rachel stared at the message, then pocketed the phone and turned her attention back to the lecture. The professor was explaining compensatory mechanisms, how the body fights back when everything goes wrong, how sometimes, against all odds, the system finds a way to stabilize. Rachel took notes and thought about fire towers and fake IDs and the strange alchemy that turns nurses into witnesses and witnesses into something else entirely. The lecture ended. Students filed out. Rachel stayed in her seat, letting the room empty, and allowed herself one moment to remember the woman she'd been 6 weeks ago. Then she stood, gathered her things, and walked into the Maryland sunshine as someone new. The Maryland sunshine felt different now, sharper, more real, like the world had come into focus after months of living through smoke and mirrors. Rachel walked across the Hopkins campus with her bag slung over one shoulder, leg only slightly stiff, and tried to remember what normal felt like. It had been 3 months since the fire tower. 3 months of physical therapy, lectures, study groups with students who thought her limp came from a car accident instead of a bullet. 3 months of being Rachel Kincaid, a name that still felt like borrowed clothes. But Vance's text had reminded her that the past wasn't finished. It was waiting in a congressional hearing room, ready to drag her back. Her phone buzzed again. Different number this time. Coffee? Same place as last time. Rachel changed direction, heading toward the small cafe 3 blocks from campus where she'd met Marcus twice before. Both times had been brief. Status updates, safety checks, the careful dance of 2 people trying to figure out what they were to each other now that the gunfire had stopped. He was already there when she arrived, sitting at a corner table with his back to the wall and a clear view of both exits. Old habits. He looked more civilian now, button-down shirt, no tactical gear, hair slightly longer, but his eyes still moved like a scanner, cataloging threats. Rachel slid into the seat across from him. You got the text too. This morning, trial starts in 2 weeks. I know. A waitress appeared. Rachel ordered black coffee. Marcus already had his. When they were alone again, Marcus said, Vance wants us both there. Full testimony, cameras in the room, the whole circus. I thought my identity was supposed to stay sealed. It was. Until Rourke's defense team filed a motion arguing that without live witnesses, the evidence is inadmissible. Judge sided with them.
Rachel felt her stomach drop. So my face goes public. Yeah. And every person who worked with Rourke gets to see exactly who helped bring him down. Yeah. She wrapped her hands around the coffee cup, letting the heat ground her. How many of his network are still out there? Unknown. We've arrested 43 people so far. Contractors, financiers, logistics coordinators. But Rourke had connections across 3 continents. Some of them are still operational. And now they'll know what I look like. Marcus leaned forward. You don't have to testify. Vance can fight the motion. Delay the trial. Find another way. No, if I don't show up, Rourke walks, and 18 Marines don't get justice. Kira. Rachel. He corrected himself without missing a beat. Rachel. This isn't your burden to carry alone. Yes, it is. I made the choice to save your life. I made the choice to help upload those files. I don't get to hide from the consequences now. The waitress returned with Rachel's coffee. They waited until she left. There's something else, Marcus said. Rourke's been talking, making deals. He's offering to give up his entire network in exchange for immunity. Rachel's hand tightened on the cup. They're not actually considering it. DOJ is. He's dangling names. Senators, generals, foreign operatives, information they'd never get otherwise. Some people think it's worth the trade. He sold weapons to the Taliban. He got Marines killed. I know. So what's the point of all this if he just walks away? Marcus was quiet for a moment. That's why your testimony matters. The jury needs to see what he did, not just read reports. They need to hear it from someone who was there. Someone who isn't military, isn't political, just a nurse who tried to save a life and uncovered treason. Rachel took a drink of coffee. It was bitter and too hot, but she needed something to do with her hands. When do we leave for D.C.? 4 days. Vance has a secure location set up. We'll prep testimony, run through cross-examination scenarios, make sure you're ready. I've testified before. Medical malpractice cases. This is different. Defense attorneys in federal cases are sharks. They'll try to rip apart your credibility, your memory, your motives, anything to create reasonable doubt. Let them try, Marcus smiled slightly. You're tougher than you look. 3rd time you've said that. Still true. They finished their coffee in silence. Outside, students walked past in clusters, laughing about exams and weekend plans. Normal lives. Rachel envied them. I need to call my mother, she said abruptly. Marcus nodded. Vance approved supervised contact. You want me to set it up? No, I'll handle it. She left cash on the table and walked out into the afternoon heat, pulling out her phone as she went. The call was scheduled for 7 p.m., routed through 3 different secure lines and monitored by someone in Vance's office whose job was to terminate the connection if Rachel said anything classified. Her mother didn't know that. She just knew her daughter, officially dead for 3 months, was somehow alive. Rachel sat in her apartment with the phone in her hand, staring at the screen, trying to figure out what you say to someone you've come back to haunt. At exactly 7 o'clock, she dialed. Her mother answered on the first ring. Kira? The name hit like a punch. Rachel's throat closed. Mom, it's me. Silence. Then a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh or both. They told me you were dead. The police came to my house. They said there was an accident. I know. I'm sorry. I can't explain everything. But I'm alive. I'm safe. Where are you? I can't tell you that. When can I see you? I don't know. More silence. Rachel could hear her mother breathing on the other end of the line, could picture her standing in the kitchen of the house where Rachel had grown up, gripping the counter like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Are you in trouble? Her mother asked finally. No, I'm helping with something important, but it means I have to stay hidden for a while. How long? I don't know. Kira, my name is Rachel now, Rachel Kincaid. That's who I have to be until this is over. Her mother was quiet for a long time. Then, are you eating enough? Are you sleeping? Rachel laughed, shaky and wet.
Trust her mother to focus on the practical. I'm eating, sleeping less than I should. You never could turn your brain off at night, even when you were little. I know. Are you alone? Rachel thought about Marcus, Vance, Commander Hayes, the network of people who'd pulled her into this world and wouldn't let her leave. No, I'm not alone. Good, that's good. The line beeped, a warning that they had 1 minute left. Mom, I have to go, but I wanted you to know I'm okay, and I'm going to fix this, and when I do, I'll come home. Promise? Rachel closed her eyes. I promise. The line went dead exactly at the 60-second mark. She sat in the darkness of her apartment and let herself cry for the first time since the restaurant. Not from fear or pain, but from the weight of carrying a secret so big it had erased her from existence. Then she dried her eyes, made herself dinner, and started reviewing her testimony notes. The trial of United States versus Adrian Rourke began on a Tuesday morning in a federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., under security so tight that metal detectors were backed up for blocks. Rachel arrived in an unmarked car with Marcus and 2 federal marshals, entering through an underground garage to avoid the media circus outside. The courtroom was smaller than she'd expected, wood paneling, rows of benches, a judge's bench that looked like it belonged in a museum. It was packed. Journalists, military brass, congressional staffers, family members of the Marines who'd died, all of them watching. Rourke sat at the defense table in a gray suit that probably cost more than Rachel's annual tuition. He looked smaller than he had at the fire tower, diminished by the weight of 73 felony charges and the knowledge that his $40 million couldn't buy him out of this. His eyes found Rachel as she took her seat in the witness gallery. He smiled, not threatening, just amused. She didn't look away. The prosecution opened with a statement that laid out the case in brutal detail. Weapons sales to hostile forces, bank accounts in the Cayman Islands, 18 Marines dead in an ambush with American missiles, Commander Marcus Thorne's 3-year investigation, the uploaded evidence, Rourke's attempted assassination of witnesses. Then they called their first witness, Marcus. He walked to the stand with military precision, was sworn in, and settled into the chair like he was preparing for a firefight. The prosecutor, a woman named Janet Reyes with steel gray hair and a voice like a blade, started with the basics. Marcus's service record, his clearance level, how he first became suspicious of Rourke. Then she showed the evidence. Shipping manifests with Rourke's signature, bank transfers, encrypted emails that Marcus had decoded, photographs of weapons crates with American serial numbers sitting in Taliban compounds. The defense attorney, a man named Porter who wore cufflinks that cost more than Rachel's car, tried to poke holes, questioned the chain of custody, suggested the evidence was fabricated, implied Marcus had gone rogue and was framing an innocent man. Marcus didn't budge. Every question was answered with calm precision. Every attack was deflected with facts. By the time he stepped down 3 hours later, the jury looked shaken. The prosecution called 6 more witnesses that day. Intelligence analysts, forensic accountants, a Marine captain who'd survived the Kandahar ambush and testified with his voice breaking about watching his men die from American missiles. Rourke's expression never changed. He sat perfectly still, occasionally whispering to Porter, projecting the calm of someone who believed he'd already won. Rachel was called on day 3. She walked to the stand on a leg that had healed straight but would never be the same, placed her hand on the Bible despite not believing in it, and swore to tell the truth. Janet Reyes started gently. Background questions. Where Rachel worked, how long she'd been a nurse. What happened the night Marcus collapsed? Rachel kept her answers short and factual. Described the cardiac arrest, the tension pneumothorax, the makeshift needle decompression with a kitchen knife and a pen. The jury leaned forward. This was the story they'd been waiting for, the nurse who saved the whistleblower. Then Reyes moved to the hospital. The men in suits with the unlabeled syringe, the gunshot in the hallway, the escape. Rachel described it all in the same calm voice she used for patient handoffs. Clinical, precise, no embellishment. And what did you observe about the men who entered Trauma 1? Reyes asked. They displayed no proper credentials. They attempted to inject Commander Thorne with an unknown substance while he was sedated and intubated. When I questioned them, one reached for what I believed to be a weapon. What happened next? Commander Thorne regained consciousness and disarmed them. We fled the hospital. They pursued us with lethal force. Reyes showed photographs of the bullet hole in the hospital wall, the cracked drywall, blood spatter analysis. The jury looked at Rourke. He looked back with the same calm expression. Porter stood for cross-examination. Ms. Kincaid, or is it Ms. Dawson? I'm confused about which name you're using today. My legal name is Rachel Kincaid. But you were born Kira Dawson, weren't you? Yes. And you changed your name under a federal witness protection program, correct? Yes. A program run by Director Vance of the Central Intelligence Agency, who has a vested interest in seeing my client convicted. Reyes objected. The judge sustained. Porter tried a different angle. Ms. Kincaid, you testified that you performed an emergency medical procedure on Commander Thorne in a restaurant. Is that accurate? Yes. And you used a kitchen knife to puncture his chest cavity. I performed a needle thoracostomy to relieve a tension pneumothorax. The implement was improvised due to lack of proper equipment. But you drove a knife into a man's chest, in public, without his consent. He was in cardiac arrest. Consent was implied under emergency medical protocols. Or you saw an opportunity, a chance to be a hero, to get involved in something bigger than your life. Rachel's hands tightened on the armrests. I saw a patient dying and I acted to save him. That's what nurses do. Even when saving him served your own interests? Even when it gave you access to classified information that made you valuable to intelligence agencies? I didn't know anything about classified information when I performed that procedure. I just knew a man was dying. But you learned later, and you chose to get involved. You chose to help upload evidence. You chose to run instead of calling the police. Doesn't that suggest a pattern of behavior? Someone who wanted to be part of the story? Reyes objected again. The judge called both attorneys to the bench. Rachel sat in the witness chair, blood pounding in her ears. Porter was trying to paint her as an opportunist, someone who'd exploited a crisis for personal gain. The attorneys returned. Porter had one more question. Ms. Kincaid, do you stand to gain financially from Commander Thorne's testimony? Any book deals, movie rights, speaking fees? No. Have you been offered any such deals? Yes, I declined all of them. Why? Because this isn't about money. It's about justice for 18 Marines who died because a man they trusted sold them out. Porter started to respond, but Rachel wasn't finished. I didn't ask to be part of this. I didn't want to lose my name, my home, my entire life. But I made a choice at table 6 in that restaurant, and I'd make it again. Because some things matter more than safety, and holding people accountable for treason is one of them. The courtroom was silent. Porter sat down. Rachel stepped off the stand and walked back to her seat with her head high and her legs screaming. Marcus caught her eye from across the room. He nodded once. Approval, respect, solidarity. The trial continued for 2 more weeks. More witnesses. More evidence. The defense called character witnesses for Rourke, fellow officers, community leaders, people who swore he was a patriot being railroaded by a rogue operative. But the evidence was insurmountable. The bank records, the emails, the testimony from survivors, the weapons with American serial numbers recovered from enemy compounds. On a Friday afternoon, the jury deliberated for 6 hours and returned with a verdict. Guilty on all 73 counts. Rourke showed emotion for the first time, a slight widening of the eyes, a muscle twitching in his jaw. Then it was gone, replaced by the same cold calculation. The judge scheduled sentencing for 3 weeks later. Outside the courthouse, Rachel stood with Marcus and Vance while cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. Federal marshals held them back, creating a barrier between the witnesses and the mob. How does it feel to know you helped convict a general? Someone shouted. Rachel didn't answer. She just turned and walked toward the waiting car. But Marcus stopped, turned to face the cameras. It feels like justice, he said. For the 18 Marines who died because a man they trusted put profit over honor. For every soldier who serves believing their command has their back. This verdict says that no one is above accountability. Not generals, not politicians. No one. Then he followed Rachel to the car, and they drove away from the circus. Sentencing happened on a cold morning in November. The courtroom was packed again, but this time there were faces Rachel recognized: family members of the fallen Marines, officers who'd served with them, veterans who'd traveled across the country to see justice delivered. The judge read the charges one by one, each guilty verdict, each specification of harm. Then he looked at Rourke and said, "You were entrusted with the lives of the men and women who serve this nation. You betrayed that trust in the most fundamental way possible. You sold their safety for personal profit. You facilitated the deaths of 18 Marines. And when confronted with your crimes, you attempted to silence the witnesses who would hold you accountable." Rourke stood at the defense table, expressionless. "The court sentences you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on the treason charges, to be served consecutively with sentences for conspiracy, weapons trafficking, attempted murder, and obstruction of justice. You will spend the remainder of your natural life in a maximum security federal facility. May you use that time to reflect on the lives you destroyed." The gavel came down with a sound like thunder. Rourke was led away in handcuffs. He didn't look back, didn't make a statement, just walked out of the courtroom and into a future measured in concrete walls and locked doors. Rachel watched him go and felt something in her chest finally release, a tension she'd been carrying since the moment she knelt beside Marcus on that restaurant floor. It was over. Really over. Outside, the family members of the fallen Marines waited. One of them, a woman in her 50s with red-rimmed eyes, approached Rachel. "I'm Sarah Mitchell. My son was Corporal David Mitchell. He died in Kandahar." Rachel's throat tightened. "I'm so sorry for your loss." "Don't be sorry. Be proud. Because of you, the man who killed my son is going to prison. Because of you, we got answers. That's more than most families ever get." Other family members gathered around. They didn't say much, just thank you, just handshakes and quiet nods. But the weight of their grief and gratitude was overwhelming. When they finally dispersed, Rachel found Marcus standing off to the side, watching. "You did good," he said. "We did good." "Yeah, we did." They walked to the car together. Vance was waiting, along with Commander Hayes. "Congratulations," Vance said. "You both performed admirably. The agency would like to offer you permanent consulting positions." Rachel looked at Marcus. He looked back. "What do you think?" he asked. Rachel considered it. 6 months ago, she would have said no without hesitation. 6 months ago, she was Kira Dawson, ICU nurse, living a life that made sense. But that woman was gone. And Rachel Kincaid, whoever she turned out to be, had learned something important in the last few months. Sometimes the most important battles aren't the ones you choose. They're the ones that choose you. "I'll consult," Rachel said. "Medical cases only, on my terms. And I finish my degree first." "Agreed," Vance said. Marcus nodded. "I'm in, full time. But I have conditions too." "Name them." "Rachel and I work as a team when cases require both skill sets. No separation, no using one to control the other." Vance looked between them, calculating. Then he smiled. "Deal. Welcome to the operation." They shook on it. Partnerships forged in fire and sealed in federal courthouse hallways. 3 months later, Rachel Kincaid stood at the front of a lecture hall at Johns Hopkins, guest speaking for a trauma nursing seminar. Her leg had healed completely, though she still felt phantom tightness when it rained. Her degree was 1 semester from completion, and tomorrow she'd fly to Morocco to consult on a field hospital setup for an operation she couldn't discuss. The students listened with wide eyes as she described combat medicine, triage under fire, the impossible choices that came with limited resources and unlimited casualties. When she finished, a student raised her hand. "How do you handle the pressure, knowing that one wrong decision could cost lives?" Rachel thought about restaurant floors and hospital hallways and fire towers, about the choice to act instead of retreat, about 18 families who finally had justice. "You don't handle it," she said. "You carry it, and you trust that the weight makes you stronger." After the lecture, she walked across campus toward her car. The Maryland winter was crisp and clear, the kind of cold that felt clean. Her phone buzzed. "Marcus, Morocco briefing moved up. Wheels up at 600 tomorrow. You ready?" Rachel typed back without hesitation. "Always." She got in her car and drove toward whatever came next. A life built on scars and secrets and the quiet knowledge that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to quit. The world kept turning. Threats kept emerging. Bad actors kept exploiting the system for profit and power. But now there were people like Rachel Kincaid, people who'd been forged in fire and decided that justice mattered more than safety, standing in the gap. The fight wasn't over. It would never be over. But for the first time in months, Rachel drove into the future without fear. She'd been a nurse who saved a SEAL at Table 6, a witness who brought down a general, a ghost who came back to life. Now she was something else entirely. She was someone who'd discovered that power wasn't loud or violent or dramatic. Sometimes it was just a woman with steady hands and an unbreakable will, standing up when everyone expected her to run. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.